Hello and welcome to the Rush Beat podcast. Today on the pod, we are going to be talking about the North American and European minor. We're going to talk about the continued resurgence of Virtus Pro at the SLI-I League Invitational tournament in Shanghai. And then we're going to talk a little bit about transfers. What's going on with the Immortals squad, what's going on with Navi, and how we expect those two kind of squads to shape up in the coming months. Let's get into it. And to kick things off, we're going to talk a little bit about the North American Minor Qualifier. I think this tournament was actually a little bit more surprising than the EU Minor, and that's for a couple of reasons. And number one is Misfits actually qualified. So Misfits, for those that are unaware, Misfits, the organization and the team that's led by Sean Garris and is a former TSM squad that famously blew up when the whole PEA scandal came out, which I'll get into in probably later episodes. They were able to qualify in a last chance qualifier after French Canadians, who had initially qualified during the closed qualifier. I know there's so many qualifiers. They have been able to actually get into the tournament. And they had to face against Counterlogic Gaming, who were invited, Luminosity Gaming, who also qualified during the closed qualifier and are one of the best Brazilian teams, and then against Rise Nation, who are a Division II MDL team, but still have probably one of the best MDL teams they had, and probably going into ESL Pro League in Season 7. So not an easy group. Really not an easy group, and Misfits did not perform well online against some of these teams. But then when they came on LAN, they proved upsets. They were able to qualify after winning 2 matches and losing 1, and they had to face Team Liquid to kick off the playoffs. Team Liquid is the most heavily favored organization team coming into this minor, and they're fully expected to actually make the major itself. And they have to qualify out of the major qualifier in this upcoming January before the actual tournament in late January. But they were, they're one of the best NA teams that currently exist, that's currently playing aside from Cloud9. So Misfits was able to win against Team Liquid in a best-of-3 match, 2-1. That is huge. That is very big for Misfits, especially because their online performances haven't been very, representative of the actual skill that they have within the team. There are a lot of questions. There was a lot of money put into this team, and so far they haven't really shown a lot of quality until this past weekend. So Misfits were able to beat Team Liquid, and then they were able to beat Counterlogic Gaming. Those two teams were just directly invited into this tournament, meaning that Misfits, it's kind of crazy. It's a spectacular Cinderella story. They had a last chance qualifier. They initially were kicked out, and they walked and worked all their way back, and they never let go of that opportunity. And they were able to make it out of the tournament and qualify for this next round. Team Liquid, on the other hand, who were considered the absolute favorite and heavily considered the favorites in every single matchup that they had to go and fight their way out of the lower bracket in this double elimination tournament. They were able to do so, winning 2-0 against Complexity Gaming and Counterlogic Gaming, and they were actually able to win the grand final against Misfits 2-1 and kind of get their revenge. So those two teams are going to be the ones qualified from North America going into this major qualifier in early January. And I really have to think that the fault within Team Liquid initially has to do with the absence of Zeus. Zeus is the coach for Team Liquid and is considered to be one of the best Counter-Strike coaches out there in the world. Zeus initially came to Team Liquid about a year ago and has since completely transformed the team into the powerhouse that they are currently. Moving on into the European minor, we actually have one of the biggest surprises. And I really couldn't believe it as I was watching it. But Optic Gaming were not able to make it out of the minor. They fell to Space Soldiers. Space Soldiers is a Turkish squad that has always been kind of a tier 2, tier 3 team, always been on the outside, never really considered to have overwhelming strength and really beat out most of these tier 1 teams like Optic Gaming, like Godsent, like Team Envious. However, this tournament, they almost, I don't want to say steamrolled, because that implies that they won overwhelmingly each time, but they had convincing wins. And that's what I think is really important to take away from here. They never showed an overextension of fault in their tactics. It was mostly execution. They had amazing ideas on how to approach each bomb site and how to counter-strat each T side that their opponents like Team Envious and Optic Gaming had. And they were able to effectively strategize and work cohesively as a team that's been together for a number of, almost a full year at this point, which in, Counter-Strike and gaming in general, that's a pretty long time. So Space Soldiers were able to qualify for the minor, and they did so by eliminating Team Envious and Optic Gaming in the upper bracket. Both those teams, Optic and Envious, were heavily considered favorites to qualify out of this tournament. Team Envious actually did end up qualifying as well after being forced into the lower bracket in the first round in the semifinals. There, they had to beat AGO Gaming, and then they actually stomped. And this was an absolute stomp. Optic Gaming looked like they just had lost the plot in that lower bracket final. They lost 16-10 on Inferno, and they lost 16-14 on Train. And that Train match, even though it's 16-14, it didn't look as close as it really was, as the score says. Envious were in the driver's seat for that whole time, and they never looked back. So you have Space Soldiers qualifying for the major qualifier for the first time in their history, and Team Envious, overwhelmingly considered a favorite. They have a great underdog story, being the leftovers of the French super team, and now they're able to prove their quality after missing out on the major on the last cycle. So these two teams are really going to have a strong outing at the major qualifier, but there's going to be a lot of questions for Space Soldiers. I think that they'll be able to qualify for the major just based off of this tournament alone, but there just hasn't been enough, evidence of them and their performance on LAN against top-tier teams. This is the first time that they really came up against strong opposition like them, like Optic and like Envious and Godsent and other of these, tier 1 EU teams. And to have consistent performances is really indicative of where they're going to be. They may not be there yet, but under the leadership of Zentaris and Calyx, who had ratings of 1.33 and 1.32 out of 2 for HLTV, those are very good, and they literally dragged Space Soldiers into this major qualifier. So we can really see some strong performances from them into this major. The one disappointing shock had to be Godsent not even making it into the playoffs and AGO Gaming beating them out. For the first time, Dennis, the Swedish Dennis, is going to not be at a major. And that just shows the downfall of the Swedish scene. NIP is not even at the minor. They have failed to even qualify for the minor for the past 2 times. Godsent, which is filled with Fnatic leftovers, it wasn't even able to make it into the playoffs. And Fnatic themselves had to come back together to their original core from last year in order to even stay at a major. So this is a very interesting situation of where I think the Swedish scene, which had been so dominant for so many years in Counter-Strike, going all the way back to 1.6, is now at kind of a crisis. Where are they really going to go from here? There doesn't seem to be a lot of strong young talent to really bring in a new era. And the older talent like Freiburg and Get Right, JW and Olaf Meister have kind of fractured and go off in their own different ways. So I think there are a lot of questions that really have to be answered in the coming year about this scene. And who knows what's going to happen. I think the Danes are really showing up, and they're showing up strong, and they might really take that pedestal away from the Swedes. Moving on to the SLI-I League Invitational Shanghai, we had Virtus Pro continue to show that they can actually perform on LAN and that their online performances are not indicative of their real quality. Going into this tournament and Epicenter, as about 2 weeks ago, there were a lot of questions over whether this team was actually going to, 1, stay together, 2, ever be successful again? And 3, should they even deserve to be at these tournaments? Are they even deserving of these invitations? And I think if evidenced by Epicenter and by Shanghai, they do. They might not have the same kind of strength and quality that they used to, and that's totally valid. I think there are still a lot of questions, and Virtus.pro themselves have admitted that there are still a lot of questions. They've shifted up different positions, they've tried different in-game leaders, they've tried different kinds of tactics, but there's still quality there, and they're still showing that on LAN. Virtus.pro was able to qualify out of the Group B with Renegades, Flash, and Havu. There was a little bit of scariness in the beginning when Flash took a 1-0 lead in a best-of-3 match against Virtus.pro, but Virtus.pro came back and was able to win that 2-1, so crisis averted. But they had to play Heroic in the first matchup, and Heroic had actually famously beaten SK Gaming in the first round of E-League Premier, I think almost a month ago. So Heroic is not a pushover team. Virtus.pro was still able to dispatch them 2-0 and able to get right into the final. Renegades, the other team that qualified, had to play Hellraisers, and Hellraisers has kind of gone under this revolution. They're looking for new talent. They're trying to bring on Issa and Woxic and really looking at different ways that they can find talent that no one else has had and bring it into a cohesive unit. I don't think that they're there yet, and I think Renegades has shown that by being more of a cohesive unit with the Aussies and with the leadership of Nifty, who came from Selfless Gaming about a year ago. Nifty, the American in-game leader and opper, was unreal in this tournament. His strats and his counter strats against Hellraisers and against Virtus.pro showed that he is probably North America's best in-game leader that they have right now. I really believe that, and I think it's actually kind of a shame that he's on Renegades. And I don't think it's a shame for him because he's getting, opportunities and he's able to lead a team that it has a lot of strong players. But I think it's a loss for North America because he will not be competing in he doesn't have that same sort of visibility to American viewers. Cloud9 and Team Liquid have Americanized squads, North American squads, whereas Renegades is technically an Asian squad, even though they're an Anglo squad. So I think that there isn't a lot of attention paid enough to Nifty. I think he's a spectacular player, and he is more deserving of the attention that the Counter-Strike scene has. He honestly is going to be one of the best up-and-comers, and I fully believe that in the next few years, people are going to look at Nifty and say, where in the hell did he come from? So then, and anything you could point at this tournament and say this is where he really kicked off. I think honestly it's only up for Renegades at this point. I think Nifty and NAF, who are the two latest additions onto the Renegade squad, are really going to lead this team to glory off the backs of the Australians. The Australians have a solid 3-man core that has built a foundation of where they allow Nifty and they allow NAF to absolutely frag out of their minds against some of these top teams. So that cohesion that is all in there with Ustillo and AZR and JKS, it really allows this squad to perform at the level that they are. And now we get to talk about one of my favorite things, transfers. Why do I love to talk about transfers? Because of the money. Okay, it's a little bit about to do with the money, but it's a lot because it's actually kind of exciting to see where our team's going to go from transfers, how our trade's going to work out, what is the actual economic gain from certain transfers, and all of that. So for those that don't know, I have actually spent the past 2 years working for professional sports organizations, and so I have somewhat of an understanding of how transfers and how trades work and what professional organizations look out for. There are many different ways that a sports organization is going to look at a transfer. One, can it make me money, and how will it make me money? Or two, how will it make me win? And if the team is going under the operation of how will it make me win, they don't care about the money. They probably have rich backing. They probably have a lot of money in the bank, and so they don't really care as much as the bottom line. the organizations and the teams that go, how will it make me money, is looking for investments and solid investments and ones that will give them an actual return. What's very interesting in the context of right now in Counter-Strike is that there's a situation where both types of organizations are pursuing the same group of people, and that is the Immortals situation. For those that are unaware, a major runner-up squad is available for purchase from Immortals because of various chemistry issues, because of the fact that one of them threatened to kill another professional over Twitter because of rumors of why they missed a grand final tournament back in June. And then the two teammates of that one player refusing to play at that point. So, and under Valve's rules, in order to qualify for a major, you have to keep the same three-man core. So that means that Henny, KNG, and Lucas, who are the aforementioned players who have now stopped being part of Immortals in terms of their contracts or in terms of being benched, they own the major slot, essentially. They own it. And there comes a price to that. And that price is compounded by the return they will get in prize money and the return that they will get in sticker money. And stickers being a in-game item that is available for purchase from Valve. And that is split between Valve and the players and the organization themselves. So what's very interesting here is that you have a team that is a major runner-up, so you know that their quality is good. And you have an actual return on investment in a very short time frame, because you know that if you invest right now, by January, you actually make money back. You might not make your full investment back, but you will make some sort of money back. And so this is where things get really interesting. Originally, rumors came out, sourced by Nel Direct on Twitter, and for articles posted in ESPN Brazil, in Nel Direct's website Flickshot, and then on HLTV, that Henny and Lucas, who are still under contract with Immortals, they would be available for $1 million USD. That is a huge sum of money. And if we go by the rumors of Nico's buyout, Nico, when he went from Mousesports to FaZe, of I think it was almost $350,000, it actually doesn't seem that ridiculous. When you really get into it, on $1 million, you know immediately right now that you have a major slot guaranteed. So that means that there is some prize money that is going to be given to you. Additionally, you know that there is going to be the automatic sticker money that is going to be given to you. So you have two different sources of income immediately given to you just from this one investment. If you tell anyone, and you say, listen, you put up this much money, I can guarantee you that you will get at least 50% of it back. There's not going to be a major investor who says, don't really want to take that risk. Because you know that there's a guarantee of getting half of it back. Then the other, the way of getting all of it back is that they then have to put in some work and actually try and get that team to be the best that it can be, and push them and make the additional investment. After the $1 million rumor came out, Decay on Twitter confirmed that original number, and then also said, actually, wait, it might be 600,000. So both could be right here. And I think both are. I think that there are rumors that Noah Winston, the CEO of Immortals, is really looking to try and get $1 million for these two, but I think he's willing to go as low as 600,000. And I don't think either number is really ridiculous here. I think the $1 million, pushes off a lot of different organizations, and it makes it very hard for someone to try and come in and acquire them. And so you limit it to a certain clientele on who exactly is going to be there. And then if they don't, if they're not signed by November 8th, which is the deadline for you to submit your major squads to Valve, then you've lost your money. Noah Winston knows this, and he knows it, and he's not a dumb businessman. And he knows that he has to basically sell them before November 8th. So that means by the time that you're listening to this podcast, which it could be this late Monday night, or it could be on the Tuesday of November 7th, or it even could be Wednesday, this will probably have already happened. It could be happening right now as I'm recording. And that's what makes this so interesting. There's a lot of behind the scenes that we don't get to see as fans of the game. that are constantly going on. And the same is said for traditional sports. Having worked there for 2 years, I know that the inner workings of a professional sports organization are much more complex than the casual fan thinks that they are. When the casual fan thinks of, hey, maybe you should do this, they've already thought of it a year ago. So Noah Winston has been planning and has been seeking and has been looking into this, and Decay came out, I want to say about 2 days ago, and he came out almost a day after the 600,000 report that he released, and said that the Cleveland Cavaliers of the NBA is looking to make the move. And they are financing Nadeshot, who is a former Call of Duty pro, under the 100 Thieves brand to acquire Henny, Lucas, KNG. And additionally, in order to fill out this 5-team squad, he's going to also acquire FNX from Immortals, who I believe still has contract through December, and then also has to purchase Bit from Team 1. Bit is going to be the in-game leader. FNX, Henny, Lucas, KNG are going to fill out the squad, being fraggers and their oppers. So that is a full 5-team squad right there that is ultra competitive. And it's not a terrible squad. It's not one that I don't believe will be unable to hold a legendary spot, a legend spot for the next cycle. I think there might be some questions over where Bit has the same fragging ability, but he certainly does keep the in-game leading ability that is needed, especially in a team of Henny, Lucas, KNG, and FNX, none of which has that tactical ability. With the regular Immortals squad, you had Steel and Bolts being the in-game leader. So I think this is going to be an interesting experiment, and the Cleveland Cavaliers definitely have the money and the equity. They recently put down $13 million under Nadeshot in the 100 Thieves brand for a North American League of Legends Championship Series slot. So the Cleveland Cavaliers, I think, are fully behind this, and I think Dan Gilbert, who is the CEO of the Cavaliers, he knows what he's doing, and he's making the smart investment into this. And that's where I think that this kind of makes a lot of sense for Immortals right now. I mean for the Cavaliers right now. By being able to purchase and immediately brand a major team, a team for the major, you're able to come up with marketing materials, promotional materials. You're able to get the brand out there. You're able to expose the brand to almost 1 million people that are going to watch worldwide. That is a huge consumer base right there. Additionally, you can start the crossover between the Cleveland Cavaliers and this 100 Thieves brand. And so at the same time, you'll be able to build up this brand, build up this reputation. And then at the point when the 100 Thieves is going to have their League of Legends spot, they'll already have a consumer base. They will have a number of customers there ready to support the organization. And that's what Dan Gilbert is betting on. He's betting that he can get people to follow the Counter-Strike team under the 100 Thieves brand, not the players, and then get them to follow the League of Legends team. And that's where I think his mind's at. He's probably going to sign these Counter-Strike players to almost a year or 2-year contract and try and get them for as many majors as he possibly can. He wants them to continue to be in these major spots so that they can continue to be great marketing materials for him and his brand. And that is where he makes his money. It's the money from the sticker money. It's the money from the prize pools. But at the end of the day, it's also this consumer base that he needs. Because if you want to build an esports organization, what better way to make your big jump than to have your brand debut in front of 1 million people watching worldwide? And that's why I think that the Cleveland Cavaliers are going to be really smart in this venture. I think there's going to be a lot of backlash from the community, and I think that needs to also be considered. A lot of people don't like the Henny, Lucas, KNG trio ever since the DreamHack Montreal incident. You know, a lot of people said they're immature, they're idiots, they're not deserving of this. But I think if the Cavaliers are smart, they can really play up this kind of bad boy side. Think about it. They're going to have this whole angle of being, you know, the evil empire of Counter-Strike. They're going to be these bad boys, and they're going to have this kind of angle that makes it edgy. And that's what really separates a lot of teams from others. You got to have an edge. You got to have a niche. You got to have something that makes people want to talk about you, make you obsess over you, complain about you, fight about you. And that's what I think this trio has. They have this certain factor ever since the DreamHack Montreal incident that makes it kind of a, you talk about them. We're still talking about them. And Henny and Lucas haven't played in months. They haven't played a single competitive Counter-Strike game in months. Yet here we are talking about them almost 4 months later. There's something about them. They were runners-up the last major, and they continue to dominate the Counter-Strike scene, even without playing a single game. It might also be the whole allure of this Villamix side and seeing what they do and the whole question, the whole aura of it, especially without there being a lot of official communication since the whole incident occurred and since the official statement. There hasn't been a lot of, definitive statements that can make people's imaginations quiet. Without a lot of talk, people's imaginations run wild. Initially, people thought that Echo Fox, led by Rick Fox, were going to be purchasing the team, and they were going to be the team for the major. And now that wasn't the case, and all signs now, according to Decay, point to the Cleveland Cavaliers. So that is definitely going to be one interesting scenario that I am looking forward to. I really cannot wait to see what happens, and it's going to happen this week. There's no other way. If nothing happens this week, then I think it's one of the biggest mistakes by an organization and even by the players. They have missed out on a major slot, and they will really rue what they have sowed. Now, moving on to Na'Vi. Looking at the new transfers just confirmed today as of Monday, November 6th. Electronic is going to Na'Vi with Seized going the other way. This was kind of a long time coming. There were a lot of rumors back during the player break and before the roster lock for ESL that Electronic was going to come. And then originally there were statements, not so official statements, but there were statements made by the owner of Flipside that all the players within the Counter-Strike roster for Flipside were under 4-year contracts and would not be going anywhere. And so that was a big concern because 4-year contracts for a Counter-Strike team is huge. Virtus Pro have 4-year contracts right now, and even then, that was considered risky. And I still think that, ES Force regret giving them those 4-year contracts given their current performances. So long-term contracts in professional video gaming, that is a whole episode for a whole other time. But as we know right now, and as what's really the subject, Electronic is going to Na'Vi and Seized is going to Flipside. So what does this mean for both teams? Well, for one, Electronic is now able to join a team that actually has more of a chance of progression within the major than Flipside does. Flipside's favorite thing to do over the past 4 majors has been to get to the major qualifier and by the skin of their goddamn teeth, somehow make it into the major. And because of that, they make it into the major qualifier the next year. And they do this ad nauseum. There's just something about it. They don't go to major international tournaments. They're not invited to major international tournaments. They are at best a B+ team. And yet they continue to perform on LAN like twice every year. It's absurd. And so I think Electronic is now able to actually go to a team that will be invited to more events and will be able to really perform. And so I'm very happy for him. On the other side of it, Seized, good. He wasn't playing well. He wasn't. And Na'Vi had no time for that right now after buying Zeus back from Gambit after he won a major with Gambit. And they had let him go a year earlier. Na'Vi needs this team. They need them to work now. There is no long-term plan other than they need them to work as soon as possible. Electronic is a good addition because he brings a fragging power that Seized simply did not have. Seized going to Flipside is good because he continues to stay in the same CIS region. He will continue to speak Russian along with his other teammates, and he will have a fine time, and he will still get paid. But for Electronic and Na'Vi, this is their only chance at this major and here's the interesting caveat, if they want to keep Simple. There are some rumors going around right now that Simple's contract ends at the end of this year, and I believe that he is going to sign something that gets them through to the major. But if they don't qualify for the major, or if they don't even get to a legend spot, or if they don't even do well and they just bomb out, I think Simple's gone. I don't think he is such a fierce competitor. I would be shocked if he decides to stay on a sinking ship. And he's smart enough to know that he is trying to put himself in the position of where he can get a high-profile move to a team like FaZe or to potentially Optic, another EU mixed team. And that's where I think that Simple's really trying to look at this. He needs this team to perform now, and there's no plan B. So with the addition, and especially with the addition of Zeus and with Guardian having gone to FaZe, there's not a whole lot else that Navi can do to try and make this work for this tournament. They have to make it to a legend spot, or it's bust, and that's my honest opinion. I want to just talk about one more thing. Thorin, you are an intelligent person. And you're definitely not listening to this podcast because I'm a nobody, and yeah, so you're not listening to me. But it's fine, because I just want to make this statement anyways. Please do not compare yourself to Skip Bayless. Oh my God. He is not a great analyst, as you say. He has made wrong prediction after wrong prediction, and he's just a man that wants to get clicks. He doesn't want to try and be accurate. He doesn't actually care about the things that he's talking about. He just wants to try and get people to notice him. And Thorin, to a certain extent, sometimes you do that too. But what's really good about you is you actually have some really, in-depth things. Your many numerous podcasts that you have are accurate, and they're helpful, and they're good, and people can learn. However, you also have kind of an edgy side to you, which is why I feel that you like to align yourself with Skip Bayless. But stop it. We're adults. We're old enough now to know that Skip Bayless is just being edgy to try and get clicks. And while maybe you are also self-aware of this and you're doing the same thing, don't do it. Don't kid yourself. Please don't. Anyways, that's my rant for the end of this podcast. I want to thank everyone for taking a listen. Please follow me at the Rush B Podcast on Twitter. I am going to be releasing a podcast every Monday. I know this one was a little late. Hopefully you are either listening to this on Apple iTunes, on the podcast section, SoundCloud, or wherever else that you get your podcasts. Please leave a rating, tweet at me, let me know what you want to hear. As a final thought, when in doubt, always Rush B.